Welcome to the Consultancy Edge. I'm your host, Matt Atkinson, and today I speak with Matt Atkinson of Enginuity. We talk about how he transitioned from 10 years in the military via Civvy Street into the world of consultancy. Talked about his role in the massive growth at Waymark, where he spent time as CIO and sales director to grow them from 700k turnover to more than 2.5 million in the space of 2 years. We talked about how he manages his time with the various different roles that he manages and what he's doing next in Enginuity in transforming companies in their digital adoption and understanding, and the impact beyond money that he's been creating in all of those businesses that he's been involved in. It was a fantastic chat with a really, really great guy. So let's get straight into it. Matt Atkinson, welcome to the Consultancy Edge.
Hello, Matt. Great to be here.
Fantastic to have you. We've known each other for a good old while. Of course, we've worked together in a professional sense for more than a couple of years now. But most recently, and I know about your background, of course, we've done a recent interview with Don Morehouse, and the theme that repeats from that one is, of course, your military background. So I wonder if you'd kick off by sharing your journey from military service to becoming a leader in tech and AI. How have your military experiences influenced your leadership style and your general approach to business?
Yeah, so the military taught me a lot of things. I did 10 years service in the military and lots of operational tours in that time. I think one of the biggest things it taught me was to quickly assess very tough situations and then take prompt action. So, 1 second delay in one of those tough situations could mean the difference between life and death. That's how serious it was. So there was a lot of repetitive training that at the time I would question, say, why are we doing this again? But then when a scenario occurred in the real world, I was able to respond to it and get things done. So that taught me a lot, and that's certainly something that I took from the military world into Civvy Street, as they call it. Um, Being able to very quickly assess things and take action, staying calm under pressure and that sort of thing, was a good strength that I borrowed from the military. The transition from the military to, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, Matt, when I drove out of that barracks after handing in my ID card after 10 years. But I drove straight from Salisbury down to central London. I didn't even have a suit to go to work. I had a job to go to. I left on the Friday and started work on the Monday. Um, but I went straight down to central London and bought myself a nice suit, and then in I went. And it was different. There was a lot of hours in the military, and in Civvy Street, I found that I had a lot of time available to me. I did the 9 to 5, and then outside of that was my own time. So it gave me lots of time to practice skills and get stuff done. Had all this additional resource at my disposal, so it was a good start to having flexibility and being motivated to make a difference.
And I know that, I mean, you've talked about obviously the fast action and the importance of that in the military, taking that to business. I think a lot of people would reflect on the fact that sometimes we do procrastinate, don't we? Especially if we haven't got clarity of vision on what we're doing in our consultancy, for example. What would be your tips for anybody that does find themselves procrastinating, perhaps overthinking where they're going in business? So there's some kind of lessons around that.
Yeah, being disciplined is really important. I'm one of those guys that will get up at 5 a.m. every morning, hit the gym, not check my phone first thing, not be distracted. I'll hit the gym and get focused for the day. Fit body, fit mind is what they say. And I like to have routine. I like to be disciplined. I think it lends itself to having a stronger mindset, to having, using your energy better. So you're not kind of depleting that energy on senseless tasks, getting sidetracked and distracted on things that slow you down. So certainly discipline is a big part of it. The military was all about that. We had the routine every single day. You couldn't skive off for going for that 50-mile run. You had to get stuck into it. And yeah, that works really well for me.
Yeah, routine. I love that. So you talked about obviously that day one going and getting the nice suit and going into Civvy Street. Talk us through your business journey, if you would, from that first day. What has been your journey through the corporate world?
Yeah, so NatWest Markets, the trading floor, they called it the bull ring. That was one of my early experiences of working in Civvy Street, and the powers that be at the time, the people I reported into said, most people last 6 months here because it's so hectic and so busy. By comparison, it was one of the easiest environments I'd worked in. There was nobody throwing rocks and petrol bombs at me for starters, so no bullets flying. It was just people shouting and screaming. So I started in quite a tough technical environment. It was fast paced, but I just loved it. I loved what I did. I've always been creative, just in different realms and different roles. I've always been an ideas person, so one of the things that really stood out was receiving a challenge or a problem, something going wrong, and having that ability to think about it. So I was only 6 months in, I think, with Computer Center. Was the IT services company that I work for, and I won. I got given a 6 month, sorry, 6 week project that I cracked in one weekend because I had that much time on my hands and I was so motivated and I was loving what I was doing. So I cracked it in one weekend, and then I didn't expect anything from it, but I won Rookie of the Year, and they sent me to the Caribbean on a all expenses paid yacht, trip around the Caribbean and things, and that was a real game changer for me. I thought, this is this level of reward that you get from working hard in this environment. So it really lit things up and gave me the motivation that I needed to just continue to invest in educating myself, developing myself, and moving forward. So fast forward, I mean, I went through the ranks pretty quickly in Computer Center. I was headhunted by Sage in Newcastle after that, and went to Sage, which was a completely different experience again, but taught me all about software. And then at a certain point, I didn't want to be a cog in the machine anymore. I found being in employment being really overly complex, and I like simplicity. So I wanted to get away from red tape and policies and different values, and get into something that better suited my values, and how I could focus on helping people and simplifying things. And that was the transition. That was the first time really I thought, I'm going to train myself up and I'm going to become an independent consultant, self-employed, and then eventually starting businesses as well to do the same.
Wonderful. And I mean, we'll come back to that kind of next step of your journey, of course, go into a bit more detail because there was a huge growth story I know from your next role there. I just want to pick up on the fact, I mean, you talked about the ease with which you went into that, what others perceived as quite a dynamic and pressure-filled environment in the bull ring. And you mentioned, of course, you haven't got people throwing petrol bombs, firing bullets at you. In a recent interview with Alan Weiss on this podcast, of course, he talked about, and it was in the context of sales, I think, about consultants when they are selling themselves, when they're selling their propositions as well. They overthink it. They get a bit too sort of dependent on the results, I guess, too fearful of the no, too attached to the yes. Have you found as well that sort of in that environment, because you've had to sell yourself, you've had to sell propositions, of course. I found you to be an excellent salesman. Do you think that's helped you as well? The fact that nobody is going to die if you don't get that sale?
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. I do see a lot of consultants that do overcomplicate things. I think I've worked alongside other especially large corporates, global consultancy companies that they can have a very overly complex and feature-packed solution to a problem. I think again, I like to simplify. So it's an easier thing to bite off, isn't it? When you go to a client and it's not a massive great sell. It's just getting started. Start small and scale big. That mentality makes it a lot easier to sell things in. Um, so I've got a pretty good conversion rate, which I'm quite proud of. I think the average in our industry is about 7%, and in the organisations that I've worked with most recently, it's been 70%. Because we're continuously showing progress and continuously adding value. I never want to work with anybody really, to be honest, Matt, in a capacity where we're just um, going through the motions but not delivering any benefit. Like I don't want to be in that space. So I normally find that, we're showing progress in the first ever engagement, even if it's just for a couple of hours, we're still showing progress. And that naturally leads to more interest and more engagement. So yeah.
I know that just coming back to the next stage of the journey. I mean, he talked about obviously finding purpose and going into a role that had more meaning for you. And I'm talking about your role at Waymark as Chief Innovation Officer, of course. I want to talk about the growth story shortly, but I do want to just dig into that purpose part, because I know that you were more interested in the impacts that you were making with your clients. That it went beyond money for you, didn't it?
It did, yes. I've been involved in the healthcare sector for as long as I can remember now. Even outside of my professional career, I grew up with a disabled father who had polio from the age of 2. So that was part of my personal life in growing up with that. He was also what he called a care bear. He was a care officer and he worked with severely disabled adults and children. So again, that was a big part of growing up. So it's always something, outside of work. I've been very charitable. I've helped children who were confined to wheelchairs to walk again. I've always been interested in doing pieces of work that benefit people. So one of my early influences, Nicholas Bate from Strategic Edge, took me on my first consultancy course when I was with Computer Center, and he talked about this life compass. And it was great because, like, if work's pointing over there and life's pointing that way and they're not connected, then you're going to have a struggle. So it was all about everything pointing in one direction. And when I first connected with Waymark, they'd just come out. We'd all just come out of lockdown. A lot of companies, especially in the Northeast, were really badly impacted. Some of them don't exist anymore in the same space that Waymark were in. And I had been a partner to them for some time. And the CEO approached me and said, "Look, can we do something together? Can we, merge the companies, or can we get ourselves together to do something different here?" So he recognized that I had skills that the company didn't have. I really wanted a capable team around me as well, a technical team, which, I'm not technical, but I've always wanted that. So we agreed to get ourselves together, and as part of that, it was a shift. It was a real pivot for Waymark to niche down essentially to become more focused and specialist on a specific area, which was healthcare initially, but also then to go from being a fairly low turnover company to turning over millions. So that was a lot of work to make that happen. I made it sound really, really simplistic, I think, and easy. But it was 3 years well, 2 years at least of hard graft to run that growth strategy and take the company into a different space. But what that gave me was the vehicle to make a difference, to take on projects in the healthcare space, which extended to life sciences and social sciences as well,
Yeah.
and focus less on making money and more on leaving or creating a legacy. So we want to be saving lives, improving patient experiences. That's a completely different spin to we want to increase our profit.
Yeah, it seems like an endless task to fix all of those issues that seem to permeate the healthcare sector, of course, and it's an admirable thing to do. Great to, and I'm very conscious, we've got some very commercially minded listeners. Great to make money at the same time, and as you mentioned, some really stratospheric growth at what was a difficult time for the consultancy sector as a whole. I think it's fair to say that you bucked the trend, going from, as you did, around about 700K of revenue. And I understand Waymark were kind of at that level for some considerable time, kind of really striving for that million barrier, but never quite getting there. And then 2 years later, after you've kind of taken this pivot towards healthcare and implemented the growth strategies that you did, 2.5 million in revenues. What was some of the kind of initiatives? What can you share with the listeners? So yeah, what's the edge? What's the secret sauce to that sort of growth?
Um, the positioning was important. Obviously, we worked with you on that. That was really good because it gave us focus. It gave us the right messaging to connect with our audience. Understanding the audience was important by itself. You know, who is it that we're going to work with and why? So the NHS, as an example in that space, is a very complex organization. It's lots of organizations that make up one big organization, and very difficult to interact with, very difficult to get traction. So it wasn't all easy sailing. You know, there's projects there that were going on for years that are still that we're still trying to get traction with. So you know, it's a tough space to work in, but the rewards are massive. But having that positioning did help us to understand it, give us that focus as a business. The next things, I was obsessed with KPIs, and it was the basics of recruiting a sales team and training them up and saying, right, I'm just going to measure you on the amount of leads you're coming in. Then I'm going to measure you on how many you convert, and then I'm going to measure you on how much profit we're making. Because the more money we get back in the bank, the faster we can grow the company, and the more organisations within the NHS and private healthcare we can help. So that was the strategy. It was cracking the whip, to keep focused on those key performance indicators of bringing in a significant pipeline. And at the end of last year, that pipeline amounted to around £6 million, from nothing, 3 years earlier. So it's quite a significant growth in terms of focus. We knew that we had uh, not we weren't going to convert everything,
Yeah.
right? We're not going to get 6 million quid in. But we knew that from that pipeline we could very quickly take things through that hopper and get to a point where we're saying, right, we have the most confidence in these deals, and yes, we're going to get them across. And as I said, the conversion rates were plus 70%, because of the approach that we took and the simplicity that we applied to it.
I think there's a lot of consultancies I speak to still struggle with that sort of boom and bust cycle that tends to come from, a lot of focus and activity in sales, getting the business in, but then having, of course, to deliver. And it comes, of course, from having senior consultants involved in the sales process that are then diverted to delivery, and then, of course, the pipeline that sort of dries up a little bit. Have you got any tips for, is it just relentless focus? Is it about taking a punt and a risk in bringing that first salesperson on board that has that singular focus on pipeline? What are some of the things that you would say to those that might still be suffering that roller coaster of new business?
You mentioned risk, Matt. You've got to have the courage to take the risk. Believe in your approach. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. If you understand your audience and you understand their challenges, that's part of the problem, right? That's your purpose. So creating a mission around that, and being focused on solutions that alleviate that problem or deliver that challenge that your client is focused on. That's as complex as it needs to get, right?
Yeah.
It becomes much simpler, I think, when you're in that space and you haven't got all the noise. I think when we're focusing on multiple sectors, that was really, really difficult because you needed to watch the markets. You'd have all of your hooks in the water to pick up bits of information about what are going on in different sectors. So what's happening in construction? McKinsey's saying it's second last place on their index, digital index. So you need to learn all about that, what's holding them back, and then there's manufacturing. So I think if you're jumping around all over the place, it's very, very difficult to get to know your client. When you niche down and you become more specialist on a specific area, you'll naturally grow outside of that area because there's links to other things, as we did with life sciences and social sciences, because you can't fix reactive healthcare if you don't deal with preventative healthcare in society, for example.
Yeah.
So you'll naturally find other paths and grow, but it all fits under the same model. It's not a distraction; it's just an extension of what you're already focused on, and that made it feel so much more easier than just trying to spin lots of plates.
Yeah, and I know that you talked about, of course, and this is something, it should be teaching grandma to suck eggs, this particular statement. It's very throwaway, but we should have a deep understanding of the markets in which we're operating. We should be able to speak on a level with our prospects, of course. And I know that, again, during your time at Waymark and your time specifically dealing in that healthcare sector, that you identified the sort of absence of empathy really in the relationships that were happening in that environment between digital teams and the healthcare sector. And I wonder if you could elaborate on this idea that you really coined of empathic shift, this approach that you essentially created, and how significant was that in your growth trajectory and in the relationships that it influenced?
Yeah, so there's a bit of a hopper around this as well, because you look at a target sector. So we took healthcare, for example. It's so broad, there's so many different disciplines within it. So we were, one step down from that was the subsectors within the healthcare sector. And of course, you can do this with any sector. Um, so you come down a level and you say, okay, let's focus on that piece there. What's going on there? And then within that, you've got use cases. So we're starting to understand through analyzing processes and different operations and things. We're starting to understand how things work and what's holding them back, and where's the bottlenecks, where's the expense, why are things not flowing as efficiently as they can do. But yes, empathy is a key part because everyone's heard the story of, well, we want to implement this system, but Fred's got an Excel spreadsheet and it's the best spreadsheet in the world, and there's no way he's ever going to adopt that system. So the only way to understand Fred's spreadsheet, sorry for the bad analogy, but the only way to understand that is to speak to Fred, right? And you've got to do that in such a way that you completely empathize with his point of view and why this spreadsheet's so important, and the effort that Fred might have put into it over the last 20 or 30 years, all those lessons learned and knowledge that's gone into building this tool. So you've got to engage people from the offset in order to get the adoption later on. And I think if you do connect with people and you can take them on that journey right from, this is when we're doing the discovery right at the forefront. We're involving as many people in that discovery as possible and getting all these points of view. And then prioritizing and voting and saying, you can't just run with everything. Everything's important to everybody, but you've got to narrow it down and say, right, let's vote as a team and let's prioritize as a team to really understand what we're going to take forward here and what are the most important characteristics of this new solution that we're going to build. And that's where you get the adoption. That's how you drive the adoption. So empathic shift is all about, it's an alternative term to digital transformation. It's about demonstrating that human engagement and empathy as a guiding principle can make such a massive difference to the outcomes of a project. So yeah, we take that stuff really seriously.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. And I think that just comes back to that whole, again, understanding of the market, taking a very diagnostic approach, of course, but making it more human at the same time. And, we still witness some consultancies too reliant on the tools, the technology, a templated approach and productization. All of those are good things to have, a very process-led, repeatable, consistent approach. But I guess it's about marrying that with that human aspect, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The old the magic three was always. I learned this in the IT world. We always spoke about people, process, and technology. That's what every project come down to. Um, the new my future version of that is the human engagement bit. How do you create a digitally enabled workforce, for example? How do you take people with you and have them in a space where they can't wait to get their hands on the solution? And that comes down to lots of different things like the user experience and user interfaces and the fact that we've got all of the right functionality that alleviates their concerns. So how do we meet their needs and pains and gains and things? So that's one part of it. So that's the people side. Process is really important. And by the way, technology's last, right? We've got an abundance of technology and it's expanding every single day. Can't keep up with it. So we're very confident that the technology's there, but from a process perspective, it's all about experiences nowadays. That's what people see and touch and feel. And there's so many different technologies whether they're audible or visual, kinesthetic, there's so many different technologies that we can interact with in so many different ways that really brings that whole experience to life. So that becomes really important. It's not just about the background process, the database and the logic. It's more about that front end and how people connect with it. And it's becoming massively personalized that now. So, you can have several people using the same solution that get different experiences, different color schemes, and we've got DEI to take into account. Um, it's so varied nowadays, and there's so much available to people that it's become really important. So when you take them two factors into place, the people aspect and the experience, technology is just the enabler. That's just something that you plug in to make all the other stuff happen.
Excellent. And I know that this leads us into the conversation about your new venture, of course, Enginuity, which I want to capture that your excitement levels right now, going into that new venture. How are you feeling about this? Starting a new business, obviously building up the pipeline from scratch, going from zero again, almost in startup mode. What are the core objectives for Enginuity? What are you looking to achieve through this business?
Yeah, so whilst I've been working in a technology business for the last 3 and a bit years, System 88 was a company that I had um, from 2018. I think I founded that company. It was a process consultancy company, and it's been sat there in the background, dormant for some time now, for 4 years or so. Um, it was an exciting start it was the first business I started, System 88. And I remember putting 10K in the bank and panicking about spending every single pound of it. It's like, oh, I need to spend 4 quid on Google G Drive or whatever it was, and panicking and going, I haven't got any business in yet. Um, and then my first purchase order was 6 figures and I nearly fell over. So, I went from survival mode to, let's do this pretty quickly with System 88, and it gave me tons of confidence in what was my first, as a founder of a business, it was my first experience of that. Everything become much simpler once the money started flowing, and I could shape the business and expand it. Now, I always had a desire to scale it, and build products to help do what I did, which was consulting with people on their current process and helping them to understand the art of the possible and how we could increase efficiency and take their organization or their business forwards. The technology at that time wasn't really around, which is why then I got involved in technology businesses. But now, fast forward, I've now rebranded that business from System 88. I won't tell the story about that, but here's a whole story around why I called it System 88. But I've rebranded to Enginuity, which brings together engagement. So I talked about human engagement before. That's one of the attributes of it. How do we connect with people? Digital engineering is still a big part of it, albeit I'm more focused on artificial intelligence now, so doing things in a much more efficient, much smarter way than the manual churn. And Ingenuity that I get lots of feedback from my clients on the way that I look at things. I don't always pick the most cutting edge technology. I'll pick something that's simplistic and does the job. So I've got a good knack for looking at things through different lenses. The six hats and all that, looking at things differently and coming up with some game-changing solutions. So that ingenuity comes into it as well. So I put those three things together. It took me 10 minutes this. I didn't waste a lot of time on it. And come up with the name Enginuity. And that's what it is. So I'm busy building the frameworks to underpin that, how I'm going to operate and how I connect with people. But something that's very different for me now that I've never done before. I have been an instructor before in the military, and I did some training in Civvy Street as well. But I've never been a full-time tutor or trainer or teacher. But that's going to focus a lot in this. So a big part of my new value proposition is to educate people. The first thing I'm looking at is going into an organization to talk to them about their existing process and how they can uh, adopt things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other things. Um, it's an educational piece. I'm going to be consulting with them to show them the art of the possible, to explain what AI is all about and how they might adopt it within their organization. And then the next bits come after that. So then comes in the support and the projects and other things if they want that. So I can also help with that as well.
You've clearly got the capabilities and the knowledge to kind of back this up, but I wonder how much of that journey has been about almost selling before you sort of build the offering in its entirety. What's been the sort of balance there, Matt? Has it been about have you sort of built that proposition to teach and to coach and to implement, or does some of those building blocks still need to go into place?
Um, yeah, I'm not. I think the knowledge is in my head. The approach, the methodology. I've been a design thinker for 20 odd years, so a lot of the component parts are just hardwired inside of me now. I can step into a room and make these things happen. I do want to systemize things because one of the things I mentioned earlier was I want to build product. I'm one person. I'm 54 in a couple of weeks. But I'm one guy. I've got a great network of other design thinkers that are very keen to get involved with what I'm doing. So I've already spoken to them. So I have got some capacity to grow. But the real advantage, especially with the arrival of smart systems like AI, is to systemize things and create solutions that are self-service that people can just pick up and use. So I don't need to be in the room coaching them. I just give them the vehicle for coaching themselves, for learning and adapting. So that's something I'm going to be focused on as well as part of this business model. And I did, naturally, I've got a great wealth manager who's helped me with this. I've put money aside and thought, well, I'm going to invest in this. I'm going to put some money into this business to get it kickstarted and start to build these solutions. So yeah, I'm less panicky this time around about putting
Paying off
10K
due
in the
from.
bank and worrying about spending every pound. I think I've got over that. I've put that pressure behind me and said, you know what, let's even if it takes me a year to get going, I really want to get the quality of this company sorted in the right way because it's going to affect the client base. And as I said earlier, my client base is health and life sciences and social sciences. So I want to save lives and things. I don't want to risk doing things wrong or doing half a job. And I need to take this seriously and do it right.
Super. I love that. And I know that adjacent to this, you're an ambassador as well for the Digital Poverty Alliance. So talk to us about that a little bit and what initiatives are you most passionate about to bridge that digital divide that exists out there?
Yeah, so that's a voluntary role. It's a charity and it's really important. I'm glad it's starting to get recognition and traction now. It's really starting to take shape. It's been around. I've been an ambassador for that charity for a few years now. But as technology moves on, there's a lot of people are left behind, and not just because of the different generations. The easiest thing to say is, well, we've got some old age pensioners that can't use iPads, for example. It's not that. There's different abilities. There's people that live in poverty that don't have access to digital devices or connectivity. There's lots of different problems there, and if you were to map out all of the different personas or use cases, there's hundreds of them, if not thousands of them. But the scary truth is that as technology continues to advance, people are being left behind and excluded. So that's something certainly I wanted to be involved in. And there's a chap called Andy Wake, who's another ambassador who's in the region. So we connect a lot and do a lot of projects together. So I've helped with um, taking assets from big corporations like Nissan Manufacturing UK, when they've got redundant laptops and things. Andy's helping to collect those assets in and redistribute them to children, teachers, people in the community that need the assets that otherwise wouldn't have them. Shocking that teachers and schools don't have access to mobile devices and laptops and things, but more so for children and families that need access to things for learning, and to do the job and other stuff. So that's really important. But then just one of the most novel things was, how do we connect lots of people that just don't have connectivity, don't have devices? So one of the novel ideas I come up with, and this is where the Ingenuity piece comes in, was around using cash point machines as a means of delivering healthcare messaging and social messaging as well. Um, Two-factor authentication exists in it because you've got to put your card in, enter your PIN. So it's very secure. There's 53,000 of them across the UK. They exist in areas where there's poverty because people don't pay with the mobile phone. They get cash out and pay with cash. So that's one of the starting points, is how do we connect an NHS ID with a bank account number and pass messaging through to a cash point, so that when somebody goes to get some cash out, they get a reminder about a medical appointment or some advisory information about how to look after the well-being. And beyond that, it could be point of sale solutions. So when you're getting your milk and bread in the shop, you're getting a reminder on your receipt to say you've got an appointment next week. So there's lots of different ways that we could extend digital solutions to people that otherwise wouldn't have them.
Love that. Yeah, such left field thinking. I guess that's why people need you. Um, I'm getting the sense because you do so much, Matt. You've talked about obviously your work ethic and your 5 a.m. start and getting in the gym. Couldn't think of anything worse, but that's me. Um, so you balance all these multiple roles and projects, and a lot of which can be, massively challenging as well, especially as you get your teeth into some of these client projects, of course. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to relate to that. The big thing is, how do you manage your time and maintain high levels of productivity as you're going through all of this as well across these various initiatives that you're involved in?
Yeah, it's something I'm still trying to figure out, to be honest, Matt. But one of the most recent learnings was, everybody talks about work-life balance, and I will take time out. I've been guilty of not taking time out, of just giving up holidays and just maintaining that flow of that pace of business. I think that's the entrepreneurial or small business mindset that I have. Um, but I have learned that it's not just work and life, because even in life, I've got a sister who's ill at the moment that we're supporting, and an aged father-in-law that we look after, and we go to visit quite frequently as well. There's all these other things in life that take over. So the third component is it's looking after yourself. So going to the gym, it might be seem pretty daunting to some people, as you said, getting up at 5 a.m. and going to the gym. But that's the thing that to maintain that healthy balance, to look after one's well-being, and make sure that you don't end up in a position where you then become a draw on somebody else that needs to look after you. I think that's really important. So I like to keep those three things in check now. I'll look after myself on a daily basis. I'll maintain the right mindset and the right energy to do that through that discipline. That creates resilience, which is fantastic. So you can keep going, and you can keep going back the next day. I do naturally sprain an ankle or get a cold or something that knocks me, but I try to get back into things as quickly as I possibly can. But all of that adds up to increased confidence that then affects your positive mindset that just keeps you going. And as I said earlier on, it's about that consistency and maintaining that pattern that just keeps you going.
I love that. And I can say, I mean, historically, I've seen a very evident correlation between the times when I've, had a big focus on health and fitness and the performance of the business. To be perfectly honest, they do say health is wealth, and I think that really is a thing, isn't it?
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely, yeah, yeah, it is. Couldn't agree more.
and aside of all of that, and I guess I'll ask this question this way. If you were starting again, Matt, and I guess you are to an extent, but if you were, not to put too much emphasis on the years behind you, but if you were a young consultant now starting again, what would you do differently? What would some of the core lessons be that you take back to that stage?
Yes, I think because I am going through this is find your niche and focus on it and do what you love doing. I found that I mentioned being a cog in the wheel earlier, and what I meant by that was being part of an organization that's deciding for you how you're going to operate and what you're going to be focused on. You'd have some objectives set, and next thing you know, you're on a project that you're just not interested in. So that was what, as I said, one of the reasons why I wanted to step outside of that and do something that really interests me. I have fallen off the wagon a few times. So I've naturally fell back into that trap of doing things that other people want me to do that I really don't enjoy doing. Not that I'm not capable of doing it. Um, in Waymark, for example, I was the sales director as well. I did consultancy, marketing, and sales. I was the sales director in there, and I was good at sales because I learned the process because I'm a process guy. And I got really good at that. I was the best in the company at doing that. But it's not my passion. It doesn't drive me. My purpose really is to get into that space where I can find a complex problem and simplify, implement a simple solution. That's what I really enjoy doing, and doing that in a space that where I feel like I'm really adding value and supporting people is exactly where I wanted to be. That's the advice I'd give to everybody is, don't let employers and customers and other things shape your value proposition or your purpose. Um, get focused on what's important to you, that niche, and really work at it.
Yeah. So find your niche, stick to your values. Those are the things that you take back. I love that.
Yeah, va values are really important as well. I've sat and the easiest way to do that is just to sit and just throw keywords down on a page, and think about your individual values. Yeah, and then work it out from there, right? But I see a lot of them when you go into large corporates. There's these really complex values, guiding principles, and other things, and then you look at the culture within the organization, and nobody sticks to it. That false values, right? So it's really important that you understand your values. Mine are like dream big, deliver bigger, be original and bold. Don't follow the trend, like book the trend and do things differently. I'm massively curious. So one of my values is that I'm curious and I unlock better outcomes because this innate curiosity that children have. They're not shut down by everything around them. They're just very creative. They just think outside the box. So I love that. That's a great value. And then focusing on results over intention. So I always like to demonstrate progress and results. Even if we're having a 60-minute meeting, I was going to say 60-second then, but even if it was 60 seconds, I'd want to show some progress. I'd want that person to step out of that conversation saying, okay, I haven't just listened and I've got nothing out of it. I've listened and now I'm further forward than what I was before and I'm making a difference. Um, and I do work hard, but I play hard as well. So that's a good value to have. And then just that constant striving to be exceptional, high quality is something that's in there as well. I don't like to do things by half.
Yeah. Yes, that play hard comes a little bit. That's a value adopted by most in the Northeast, in my experience, is it not?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, just have a weekend in Newcastle and you'll see.
Yeah. Great stuff. Okay, Matt, reached a point where we come to our regular feature, Snog, Marry, Avoid. Of course, a snog is a quick win. What is one thing that you think everybody needs to perhaps implement and try to make a quick difference in their consultancy business?
Um, as a quick win, I would say start small and scale big. Don't focus on too big of a challenge. It's good to have the big idea. I read a book called The Big Idea. I think that's what the book's called. But it was fantastic, right? Because it's good to think about, what's the nirvana? What does it look like? That fantastic thing that you're going to achieve in 5, 10 years time. But you've got to start somewhere. And I think if you overwhelm yourself and try to do too much and again spinning too many plates and being focused on too many things, you just stagnate. You just that progress stops. So start small, pick the most important thing, the specific thing that is a high priority that's going to deliver real returns that will allow you to then invest in further things, both from a time and money perspective. Do that, you know.
Wonderful.
So
Right. A marry is something that you would implement in your consultancy for the long term. What's going to have the long term benefit inside your business?
um, what I'm going to focus on a tool here, a technique that I picked up called Note and Vote. This is something that's just been magical. I learned it from AJ and Smart in Berlin. Actually, they got it from the Design Sprint book. Jake Knapp. It was one of the techniques that Google Ventures used as part of the Design Sprint, and it was all about get a pad of sticky notes. I've got some on my desk here. Um, Write down as many things as possible. So imagine you're in a room full of people and you're trying to confirm what should be on the menu for dinner next week, right? Let's create the scenario. You're on an oil rig and they're saying, right, what's going to be the menu for next week, as an example. Now, if you just got everybody to just individually write down or start a debate what their favorite food was, it's just absolute chaos. Okay, so this technique is right, get everybody to write down what the favorite foods are. Then as a group, you start to prioritize and vote on it. So everybody individually presents it, and it's the like higher or lower. The good way to do this is to put the sticky notes in a pyramid with the most important one at the top. Or you could just give people a number of votes, three little sticky dots each, and they go and vote on what they think the best idea is. And it's just a fantastic technique for getting lots of information out of people's heads, presented to a large audience, and then to have that collaborative approach to agree on what the priority is. And when you do this in business, it's game changing. I worked with a transport company, Nexus in the Northeast, who'd for many years struggled to get agreement on what the most important reports in the business were. We got 40 odd people in a room that never collaborated like that before. They were all different departments. We got them all in the room, including the managing director, newly appointed, Kathy. And we spent the whole day capturing all this information from everybody and then voting and getting complete agreement across everybody on what the most important thing was. All that buy-in straight away. And this is a great example of that empathic shift because we've involved everybody in the process. There's no arguments, everybody's agreed, and they've all stepped out of the room, patting each other on the back and saying, yeah, we've got a way forward here. So it's a fantastic, very, very simple technique, but hugely beneficial to bringing things together and making decisions.
Yeah, I've done that training with AJ and Smart too, and that's been transformational in our business. We use it all the time, looking at a wall full of post-its as we speak. The other thing important for that, which you'll remember no doubt, is the importance of having like a tiebreaker, somebody in the group who can decide between, in the instance where there is, equal votes across a couple of things, maybe two or three. But
Yeah.
yeah, fantastic content, good organization that. Okay, lastly, the ditch. What would you encourage people to avoid, get rid of, get out of your consultancy business as quickly as possible?
Time wasters. And that could be routine tasks, systems, people. It could be any of that, right? Anything that just saps your time and depletes that effort. That's the one thing to stay away from. You've got to assess everything that you're doing and assign a priority to what you do. Everybody does this in their home life. It's like I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to hoover for 2 hours a day. Like I don't need to do that. You've got to understand. You've got to assess everything, understand how much energy you're going to assign to it. It's an investment. Everything's an investment.
Yeah.
So the one thing I do, um, yeah, I'm not afraid to speak up and step away from or say no is anything that I look at and I assess quickly and say, well, actually, that feels like a waste of time to me. I will work to understand what the benefit is, but if I really can't see it compared to everything else, it doesn't fit in. Again, it's that note and vote, same technique. Um, I'll say no to it and I'll step away from it because all of us need to maintain that focus and that agility. That's what grows a business.
And I guess it
And if
helps
you're just
helps
going
again
around in
knowing you.
circles.
It helps
So,
again knowing your values, doesn't it, Matt? Because I guess you can sense
yeah,
check that particular thing in front of you against whether it sits with your values and therefore whether it is going to be a time waster.
absolutely, Matt. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because otherwise, again, you're back to just doing what everybody else wants you to do, and that's not necessarily the best thing. So yeah, stay focused.
Wonderful. Matt, this meeting of Matt's has been very enjoyable for me. I hope it has for the listeners. I'm sure it has some absolute nuggets there. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Consultancy Edge.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me on in the first place. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks.